I have a bit of a confession to make. I am someone that will often look up the whole plot of the movie and how it ends before I go see it. No, I know. It was real tense between mine and Brendan's relationship during the Avengers Infinity War saga, because I would look at everything and then go watch the movie with him, and he would just wait for me to not blow it, and I wouldn't. I respected his boundaries. But I'm not going to right now. I'm going to ruin some movies for you. So if you've seen these movies, you should have, because they're kind of old. But this is great. This is one of my favorite things ever, just to know the ending. In the movie Planet of the Apes, surprise, they're actually on Earth the entire time. The Empire Strikes Back, the bad guy is actually the good guy's father. What? Fight Club, if you haven't seen this one of them isn't real. It's just split personality. And I wish it was Brad Pitt's character that was real, because that makes me feel better. Titanic, he dies, she lets him. Bambi, the mom dies. Lion King, the dad dies. Frozen, the mom and the dad die. Sixth Sense, this guy's been dead the entire movie. Pirates of the Caribbean, there's this guy, he dies in one, comes back to life in another, and then dies again in a third one. And then in Twilight, they can't die, but they're vegetarian. So there you go. Now that you know all of that about me, I hope we can still be friends. And I'll tell you what I tell Brendan every time is like, it is biblical to know the end of the story before it happens. And that's what we're talking about this morning. When we know the end of the story, your experience in the current moment, it differs. You experience current moments differently. And especially when we think about life. When you look down at the timeline of the future and human history, where it's headed, say 50, 100 years from now, what do you see? And when we talk about the end of the world or the ultimate destiny of all things, there is a word that theologians use, and it's called eschatology. I got a lot of big words for you this morning. It's called eschatology. It simply means the study of the last things. And the reality is, whether you have a seminary degree or whether you've never picked up a Bible in your entire life, everybody has an eschatology. Everyone has a working theory about where this whole thing is headed. And right now, if you look around at culture or look on your feeds, there are kind of two that are standing out predominantly right now. There's a lot, but two visions for the future. And I want to hit on two of them. The first one is what I'm calling techno-utopianism. I told you, big words. And you see, this kind of comes out of Silicon Valley and the tech world and the sciences. It is sheer optimism that humanity will eventually evolve and innovate and code our way out of our deepest problems. And it gives us enough time and enough processing power, and we will cure death, we'll colonize Mars, we'll engineer a perfect society. This is techno-utopianism. And so here are some examples of how people have lived into that. There is staggering leaps of fighting against disease and death, right? We're growing in our ability to rewrite some genetic code and eradicate genetic diseases. AI has recently predicted the 3D structures of nearly all the proteins that basically overnight, and that can accelerate timelines for discovering new cures. There's efforts for multi-planetary expansion. I'm a huge space geek. I love it. We have rockets that are self-landing. We have reusable orbital boosters, which has dramatically decreased the cost of space travel. And it's one step forward towards maybe colonizing another planet. We even want to build towards this idea of radical abundance, where it's kind of believed that most human conflict generates or is driven by a scarcity of resources. So why not try to engineer our way out of that problem into a post-scarcity world? So we have breakthroughs in fusion energy and plummeting solar power costs, all helping us towards this radical abundance view of how things will end. And this eschatology has a high view and values human effort and creativity. God has created us pretty smart and pretty creative. And so we look at what all of technology has done. It has cured diseases. It's mapping proteins. It's landing rockets backwards. It is incredible. and it's writing our own ending. That's basically this one. It's writing our own ending. And here's the catch. We can cure a genetic disease, but we can't cure pride with technology. We can build a rocket to Mars, but it will take humans that are full of greed and corruption to that planet as well. Techno-optimism is successfully upgrading our tools, but it is completely powerless to upgrade our heart. And it is completely blind to the reality of the human condition, that we have more technology, we have more wealth, we have more data than any generation in history, and we're more anxious and more divided and more depressed than any generation in history. We can't even handle comment sections in our feeds. We get raged out of that. And the human progress cannot cure the human heart. So when all of that optimism fails of our own ingenuity and our own creativity, maybe you sense the other eschatology. There's a swing in this pendulum, and it's toward nihilism. Probably nihilism. I can't say this word right. But this is apocalyptic despair. This is where we get the phrase doom scrolling. You're like, the world is ending. I'm going to watch it burn on my phone. There's no objective meaning. There's no purpose. There's no intrinsic value because it is all going to hell, basically. I think this is, it's the belief that the environment is collapsing, that institutions are hopelessly corrupt, that people are inherently awful, and we are just headed towards a burning cliff. And this is actually a helpful way of looking at the world. You might be like, you're strange. I know. But what it does is, this reason why it's attractive is it's honest about suffering. It actually acknowledges that there's deep brokenness in the world. And it can be deeply gratifying for someone who has experienced severe trauma and injustice to say, hey, don't offer me cheap platitudes of it's all going to work out. It also relieves the pressure from saving the world. Like, I don't know how to build a rocket. I'm not going to go to Mars. I don't have that pressure. I don't know how to fix it. So there's no pressure to perform or to produce or to save anything. There's a real dark comfort in just letting go of the steering wheel. It also forces an appreciation of the present moment. Like, when you strip away all the expectations of the future, the only thing that's left is like right now. So if the universe doesn't care about you, then a good cup of coffee or a moment of laughter with your friends or a beautiful sunset becomes so profound because they're so fleeting and so temporary. And existing in a broken world, it's not hard to understand why people give up. It's an honest attempt to find relief and to make sense of where creation is going. But the catch is devastating, the nihilistic approach. It leaves you completely without hope. It paralyzes the fight for justice. It can't sustain a person in actual tragedy. It makes love and relationships ultimately meaningless. And what's happening is it's basically reading the wrong ending to the story. And so here's why I took a couple of minutes to spend time on both of those. Because if you hope in techno-utopianism, your dreams are based on a fragile foundation of the human performance. If you live in nihilism, there is no point in dreaming at all. And so both of these cultural narratives kill your ability to dream. And as we end our series called Back to Life, we need to spend some time talking about how Jesus' resurrection and the Spirit of God can help us come back to life and dream again. Now we get to Scripture. And I wanted to build those first two out because I want to talk about a third way of looking at the world and how this ends. And it's redemptive renewal. And we see it in all of our Scripture, but we're going to focus in on Revelation 21. And I'll read it for you. It's up on the screen. This is verses 1 through 7. This is a vision that a guy named John has. He says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of the heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away.' And he who is seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all of this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. This is a very hopeful look. This is a very hopeful eschatology. And I want to hit some context of this and of what we just read. And I'm going to use the framework of a book that we used a couple summers ago when we went through the book of Revelation, called Reading Revelation Responsibly by Michael Gorman. It's basically, there's an argument that Revelation isn't a timetable for how the world is going to end. But it is poetry, and it is an assessment of the current political empire at the time, and it incorporates God in all of it. It's this like theopoetic, theopolitical survival manual for Christians living in the belly of the Roman Empire. And so John is writing this. He has this vision, and he writes it to 7 churches in Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey, during the reign of a Roman Empire named Domitian. And while he was doing this while he was on exile to Patmos. We'll get to that in a minute. But Domitian was notorious for pushing this thing called the imperial cult, which basically he demanded to be addressed as Dominus et Deus, or Lord and God. And worshiping the empire and participating in the pagan trade guilds was a civic duty. It was part of the local economy, and it was mandated. And so Gorman points out that when John writes these words in Revelation, he wrote it to Christians facing 2 threats. The first is they're facing persecution. Some Christians were being imprisoned or killed because they refused to say Caesar is Lord. And this is why John was exiled to Patmos. Patmos was roughly a 13 square mile, rugged, rocky Roman colony off in the Aegean Sea to punish political offenders. Today, it looks like this, and I would love to be exiled there if anyone wants to send me. So it's got to glow up a little bit. So they faced persecution, but they also faced assimilation, which is actually a bigger threat. Many Christians were compromising. They were participating in this cult and the Roman economy just to get by. They were telling themselves, it doesn't really matter. I got to do what I got to do. Rome was wealthy and powerful and seductive, and it offered peace and prosperity, but it was at the cost of idolatry and systematic exploitation. And so when we get to Revelation 21, we have to read it through the framework of like a tale of 2 cities. Throughout Revelation, John presents a stark contrast between 2 allegorical cities. One is Babylon, which represents Rome, and by its extension, any human empire built on pride and violence and economic exploitation. And the other city is this new Jerusalem, which represents the reign of God. And so John writes in verse 21, when he's writing, he's giving his audience an alternative eschatology to the empire that they're currently living in. Revelation 21 is not just a promise of where we go when we die. It is a critique of Rome's eschatology and current power. Rome has promised eternal peace and security and wealth, but it delivered those things by crushing the marginalized, by relying on slave labor, by enforcing military violence. And so when John says, I saw a holy city, the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, he's telling the early Christians, Rome is not the eternal city. Rome is the Babylon, and it's going to fall. The new Jerusalem is going to be the city that lasts. And there's this, it talks about the end of the sea in verse 1, and John claims that there's no longer any sea, and it seems kind of like, oh, you don't like the beach? You should try it. But it has a lot of political implications. Rome's wealth and military dominance was fueled by its dependence on the sea, by the Mediterranean Sea. It was a highway for slave ships, for military fleets. It was the economic engine of the empire. And by saying there's no more sea, John is declaring the end of the chaos, the end of the exploitative trade system, the end of the Roman Empire. And so Gorman argues in his book, he says the primary application of Revelation is uncivil worship. In a society that demands ultimate allegiance to the state and to its economy, worshiping Jesus as the true Lord was an act of political defiance. When John describes the New Jerusalem in chapter 21, where God dwells directly with his people, there's no more death, no more crying, where all things are made new. He's giving the church the fuel that it needs to resist assimilation and to stand up bravely to persecution. He isn't saying, he is saying, don't give your allegiance to the beast of Rome. Give it to the Lamb, because the Lamb is the one who is bringing about the new things. So is this for us too? That's a good question to ask when you read Scripture, because obviously this was a letter and a vision written to like 9 specific churches. We were not one of those churches. Did not see Harbor Covenant in the list of those. So you look at this and you're like, is this for us? And I think that's a good question. And I would argue that, there is a message in here that I think applies to us today, that we are living in an empire as well, a modern, secular, consumer-driven cultural empire. And our empire today uses techno-utopianism to promise us the exact same things that Rome might have: peace, ultimate security, salvation through human progress. But when it falls, it also offers nihilism, this despair. And when you read in Revelation, John wrote this text to wake up his friends from this seduction of the empire and invite us to live as citizens in the New Jerusalem right now. And we can dream again, not because our current empire is going to fix it, but because the new creation is breaking into the present. In what feels like the final chapter of the church, God pulls back the curtain and shows John, I'm going to read it again. He says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. There was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God." Notice what's missing from this vision. God isn't saying, hey, I'm going to trash the earth and take you away from it, and you get nice little wings and a harp and you get to float around in the clouds. He says, no, that's not my vision for what's coming. There's a theologian called N.T. Wright, and he points this out all the time. He says that ultimate Christian hope is not about escaping from the world. It is about the transformation of the world. Heaven comes down to earth. There's almost like there's 2 spheres, God's space and our space, and they're finally going to overlap, and they're going to lock in forever. An early church father named Irenaeus in the 2nd century, he used a word for this. It's called recapitulation. You got a lot of words today. It means God is gathering up all the fragmented, all the broken, all the chaotic pieces of human history, and he's putting them back together under the headship of Christ. It's like we're a broken puzzle and it's finally getting completed and renewed. And so when we go through Romans 21, we can look, okay, how's this going to happen? Well, first, the chaos ends. Verses 1 through 2, it talks about the end of the sea. Current powers will fall. There will be an end to the chaos. Relationships can now begin to be restored. Verses 3 to 4, we learn that God is going to move in. He makes his dwelling place among us, wipes away every tear, dismantles death, dismantles mourning. Verses 5 through 9, now he's making all things new. He's setting all things right. And he says, write this down. It is trustworthy and true. You can take it to the bank. I promise you, this is where it is going. It is done. And then the verses 10 through 27, you can go back and read it. They're pretty detailed a little bit and with measurements of like what this might look like, this new city. And I think he was just trying to give John and the people of God a vision of what to look for, something, because if you can't see it, it's hard to believe in it. For example, my yard has been trashed for 2 years, basically, because we had to get a new septic system put in. And my wife was like, hey, are we ever going to get this fixed? And I was like, yeah, this year. And she goes, don't hate me if I don't trust you. I'm like, that's fair. Yeah, because there's no supplies right now. So painting a picture is beneficial to giving someone hope, and that's what Romans does. And so this eschatology, it does all these things, but how does it change your life this week? It's an interesting story, but how does it help you build and maintain hope? I want you to remember that knowing the end of the story changes everything. because it tells you that the end of maybe this current chapter is not the ultimate end of the entire story. And so tomorrow morning when you wake up and you might have to go back to your difficult job or face a doctor's appointment or deal with a fractured relationship or just navigate the injustice of the world, when you do this difficult situation that you don't know how it's going to resolve, your anxiety peaks, you might freeze, but you can remember that you have a promised outcome of human history, that God will dwell with us, that the pain will stop, and that earth will be restored. And if you actually believe this to be true, it dictates how you handle your day to day. The difficult diagnosis or the financial loss that it can still cause grief, but it might not cause panic. The worst things can happen to you in this life become temporary conditions and not really permanent realities, which gives a lot of hope. And so what happens is hope is redefined. Our culture confuses hope with optimism a little bit. Optimism is kind of just a mood sometimes. It's tied to events. It's tied to circumstances of everything getting better. And so optimism shatters the second that you face tragedy and you can't fix it. But biblical hope is a promise. It's certainty. It's a defiance against hopelessness. And when you look at a broken situation, maybe it's a failed relationship, a rebellious kid, deep depression, you still can choose hope. It's difficult, but it's there. The option is there. You're not just saying, I'm sure everything's going to be fine. You're looking at the devastation and saying, Jesus Christ has promised to make all things new, and I will base my life off of his guarantee. And so hope, again, is an act of defiance against a broken world. So hope is redefined. Dreams are also secured. Your dream is no longer rests in human performance. This is exactly why you can dare to dream again after a massive failure. Your future relies entirely on your own effort, your own intellect, your own bank account. Your dreams are incredibly fragile when they're based in those. And a single mistake can ruin it all permanently. But Christian eschatology shifts the burden of success off of your shoulders and places them on Christ's. You can dream again because the ultimate success of the world is promised in Jesus Christ. And so when your business fails or when you pour your heart into a relationship and it ends, you're not destroyed by it. It hurts, but you're not destroyed because your foundational hope was never placed in your performance. And so you can rebuild and you can try again and you can dream new dreams because your future is secured in God's promises. Hope is redefined. Dreams are secured. The kingdom is now, which means you can fight for justice and you can create beauty without fear of it going to waste. Because we know how the story ends, it can change our daily actions. A nihilistic worldview, fighting for justice or creating beauty might just seem like a waste because it's going to perish anyways. But Revelation tells us that God is going to perfectly restore justice, permanently establish beauty on the earth, and therefore your current effort is not wasted. When you fight for the marginalized in our city or in our nation, you are implementing the exact justice that Jesus is going to finalize when he returns. When you forgive someone, you are establishing the peace of the new Jerusalem in that moment, wherever you are, in your living room, in your car, wherever you offer forgiveness, it is part of the larger story. Every act of compassion, every beautiful thing that you design, every broken system that you try to help fix is permanent work, not fleeting. You're practicing the new reality of the new earth today. And so because this outcome is promised, and we believe God to be a promise keeper, it is time for us to step out of survival mode. You can choose to adopt the arrogance of our culture and believe that our own human effort will eventually save you. You can choose to adapt the despair of our culture and believe that everything is permanently broken and nothing matters. And if you choose either one of those paths, you will eventually burn out. They will kill your ability to dream and to hope. And the good news of the gospel is that your future is no longer fragile. It is eternally secure. And therefore, you have the permission to open up your expectations and get your dreams back today. You don't need to operate out of a state of dread. It is time to dream again. It is time to come back to life. So I have 3 questions for you. First is for your head. Is when life gets hard, do you try to fix everything yourself, or do you usually just want to give up? I feel like one of those we do more often. For your heart, what is one specific area of your life where you need to start dreaming again? And for your hands, if God is writing a good ending, how does that change your approach to your day-to-day?